If you exist with an internet connection, then you've heard the term NFT, either from someone who's trash talking them or someone who's shilling hard so they can liquidate their own NFT collection to get the hell out of Dodge. No matter what context you've heard it before, I find that most of the discussion is between love and hate. That is with the exception of the games industry, where most people have commonly agreed it's a terrible idea. The overwhelming reaction from literally everyone, including the developers, to the introduction of Ubisoft's NFT system Quartz is testament to that. So ladies and gentlemen, today I want to take a step back and ask if there's actually any place for NFT technology in the games industry. To do this, I'll briefly go through what an NFT is, how they're being pushed currently, why people hate it, and then go through the one thing I think NFTs could be used for to potentially revolutionize the game industry. Before we begin that, if you enjoy video essay style content, there'll be a new video out every fortnight covering games and gaming, with a smattering of different videos here and there to experiment just a little bit, so like and subscribe below to see more. So we'll start with a brief overview of what an NFT or non-fungible token is. The key term in the acronym is fungible, which is something that is mutually interchangeable. If you trade one Bitcoin for another one Bitcoin, then you'll have the exact same thing, so it's fungible. The point of an NFT then is to provide a completely unique token that cannot be replicated, so if you trade one NFT for another, you'll have a completely different token. They accomplish this by adding extra information onto a cryptocurrency blockchain, which primarily revolves around linking it with what the token is actually for. Most commonly, NFTs are based off the Ethereum blockchain, and if you ever find yourself in an NFT exchange, mostly all of the buying and selling is done through Ethereum. But what are you then trading? Well, NFTs basically are something that you attach to anything digital to market with a unique identifier. Currently, it's mainly being used to buy and sell multimedia art, with the biggest and most recognizable example of this being the Bored Ape series. Then the last thing I want to touch on now is how they're used in practice, as I'm sure you've all seen the right-click and save memes, which seems like it defeats the whole purpose. Well, in some ways it does, and in other ways it doesn't. If you just want to collect funny JPEGs, then you can do it for free, but if you actually want to use them, then you need the NFT behind it. In practical terms, the concept of an NFT allows for people to easily exchange rights like copyright to different pieces of digital media or software easily. So while you can save anything you see online, you couldn't then monetize it as it's legally owned by someone else. At least in theory. I don't think this has been really challenged in a legal setting just yet, nor would anyone know where to start. As it's in that crypto decentralized internet space, the ideas of jurisdiction and just what countries' intellectual property laws come into play are kind of muddy. So until actual legislation comes to cover NFTs, how legally defensible the copyright to your coveted tokens may vary. I'm also not a lawyer, so take that with a grain of salt for legal reasons. This then takes us on to how they're being used at the moment. And our great benefactors Ubisoft are providing an excellent example of how a great many companies want to set up NFTs in gaming, by doing the exact thing as the wider market is, just on their own proprietary system called Quartz. Weapon and armor skills earned in-game have an NFT attached to them, and you can then buy and sell them through Quartz with cryptocurrencies. The basic principle of this system isn't a bad idea, providing a place for a driven player economy where they can buy and sell in-game items that they've earned. It'd be super innovative and just cool if it wasn't for one little teeny tiny insignificant detail that Steam exists with its wondrous marketplace feature. An entire system that's been around since 2011 that does everything that Quartz does, just without NFTs and crypto. Team Fortress 2's marketplace alone is worth tens of millions of dollars, and that's not even to touch on CSGO, which has reportedly had knives sell for roughly $1.4 million. The addition to NFTs to back each of these items, which could be bought and sold between accounts, adds nothing to the system, and using crypto on your exchange instead of real money isn't exactly an advantage either. The worst part about Ubisoft Quartz isn't the idea behind it. I'm honestly surprised more game companies don't have their own player-driven economies out of game, but all the unnecessary stuff they're putting on top makes it really feel like they're just doing a heckin' technology, purely so they can profit from it, which again, they could do with just a normal marketplace. Unfortunately, they're not the only ones thinking like this, but thankfully, the only ones who've actually had the guts to try it. Poorly, mind you, but most other game companies seem to have seen the absolute crucifixion Ubisoft is going through and starting to postpone or outright abandon their own NFT related plans. That would be because, I would argue, they have little to no intention of actually implementing NFTs to the benefit of the player base. But what if they did? As I'm with the almost universal consensus that the way NFTs are being pushed now now is a bad idea. But what if instead of making in-game items NFTs, we made the games themselves these tokens? That may sound very strange, but hear me out. Remember when I was explaining the nature of NFTs, that they're just tokens that can't be replicated? They can be applied to anything and everything digital. It's just a quirk of how they're mainly being used right now, which is synonymous with online art. Their main purpose is to denote ownership, and it's that which I think could make NFT technology very valuable. Interestingly, in the current climate of the games industry, you likely don't actually own a copy of any of your games, just a license to play them. To quote directly from the Steam user agreement you sign every time you buy a game there, the game software is licensed to you, not sold. This license does not give you any title or ownership in the game software. The game is bound to your Steam account, and you can only play it through that. Which is how it's been done for around a decade or so, and it has worked. There aren't really any complaints with how this system is currently, so the question then becomes how owning a game through an NFT would be beneficial to you. Well, I think the biggest thing is that it would open up an entirely new secondary game market where you can buy, sell, trade, or just easily transfer a game from one person to another. In a way, if you even wanted to look at it through the metaverse angle, which is another technology being pushed alongside things like NFTs, you would be able to hand a game over to a friend in the metaverse just like you used to be able to with games when they were purely CDs. The most significant advantage to this system would simply be price. Instead of having to wait for a Steam sale or having to go on a dodgy game key website, you would simply be able to buy a used copy. Transversely, if you have an extensive game library, you would then be able to put some of those up for sale to recover a bit of the price, as well as giving you more funds to get newer games. That's the advantage for the player. For the business that establishes that marketplace, you get your cut of each sale. If I were Ubisoft, instead of trying to make their in-game items NFT, I would make a small selection of their games require an NFT to play and then establish the marketplace for people to buy and sell those. That would be far more innovative and potentially far more profitable, as if the trend then caught on, you'd be first to market, which is a huge advantage. There are countless examples in business for this, but the most pertinent one would be Steam, and how it now dominates game distribution, with the only real competitor being Epic Games, which is both fairly recent and only a competitor because they keep buying exclusives. So then, for argument's sake, I would like to posture how such a system would function, and this is where I need to admit to you, dear listener, that my degrees are in business and economics. So if there's anything wrong with my proposal on a technical level, please let me know in the comments, as I'd be very interested. Well, first things first is something that I neglected to mention beforehand when explaining NFTs is the environmental cost. Any blockchain or cryptocurrency at its most fundamental levels are just calculations which take on a ton of processing power and electricity. The more crypto of a certain kind that exists, the more intense the calculations required to mint one, and thus the more electricity required. Chances are that the power is coming from non-sustainable sources, and so we're converting pollution into numbers which people put value in. So step one is to make an efficient blockchain designed for an NFT. This is both for the environmental costs of having to mint NFTs and the fact that you're going to need a lot of them, as ultimately anyone who wants to buy the game straight from you will need to be provided an NFT for it. In theory, I suppose, depending on the difficulty of creating a blockchain in the first place, it may be worth even having different ones per game. Again, not technically minded, so not sure on the practicality of that little suggestion. Next would be integrating the tech with the games. The best way I can think of this would be an elaborate key to get into the game, which would admittedly require a layer of DRM, or potentially an account via the marketplace, which you could then open the game exclusively from. So Steam with the marketplace for games kind of deal. Then lastly would be establishing that marketplace. And for this personally, I'd recommend going with normal money. While crypto works, most people in the world still use actual fiat currency, and it's far easier to integrate PayPal than it is a ton of crypto wallets. A business would make more on fees from the larger market appeal of using pre-established systems than it would via crypto fluctuations from the smaller demographic of people who have or are willing to set up a crypto wallet. So to conclude, NFTs or non-fungible tokens can have a place in the games industry, but that's a pretty hefty can. I don't really think any company wants to set this system up, as ultimately there'd be a ton of research and development investment required for an idea that just might not work. Even if it then did, while you would have the first to market advantage, it would require even more investment to stave off the inevitable competition that would enter this new market, and a competition that can follow your example much cheaper than it was for you to create it yourself in the first place. So do I think this will ever happen? No. I think most companies will drop NFTs as the technology of the day, and Ubisoft will die by their sword with no benefit at all. And things will largely continue as is. That being said though, if any game company wants to give this a go, my business email's in the description and I'll be happy to do some consulting work. For now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're still listening, thank you for making it to the end of the video. This is my first video on the industry more broadly, so let me know what you think, or if you just have something you'd like to see covered in the future, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, like, subscribe, and have an absolutely excellent rest of your day.